We have a Dune video game that comes from the multiverse, and yeah, there's a little bit to unpack there. Also, Nintendo wins, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And then plus continuing the saga of the layoffs in the video game and tech world, there's not a whole lot to talk about, but there's a lot of depth to each of these things. So let's get... Welcome, nerds, to this week's edition of the Gaming and Tech News, generally speaking. Now, I'm no Linus or Spawnwave or Gamers Nexus or insert channel that is dedicated to the tech and gaming news here. That's not what you're getting here. This is just enough to keep you informed, generally speaking. We do this just about every week as part of a larger news show called The Week in Nerddom over on the main channel. You can find that linked down in the description or at the end of this video. Now let's talk about some gaming and tech and maybe even some like photo, video kind of news as well. Get into it. First up, we have some follow-ups and corrections following up on the layoff situation. The next big company to announce a significant amount of layoffs is EA. They have just announced that they're going to be laying off 5% of their workforce, which is approximately 670 people are going to be without a job once EA kind of gets through all of this. That is a significant amount of people. That puts us up to, I'm pretty sure, 8,000 people who have lost their job in the tech sector since the beginning of the year, and it just became March, nerds. This is crazy. Though I still say if you were not expecting this, then you were not paying attention, because we had a boom. We had a crazy boom during the pandemic where everybody was locked up and they couldn't do anything but interact with tech by and large. So tech obviously went crazy and there were a lot of extra jobs to be had, especially immediately following lockdowns when they were still experiencing this influx of traffic. And now that influx of traffic is starting to balance back out to where it was pre-pandemic. So you kind of have to, all of that extra inflation, you have to get rid of some of the rib meat, if you will. So yeah, EA, the next one. Our other follow-up this week has to do with Baldur's Gate 3. The physical release is finally about to happen, and Xbox players who are looking for the physical copy, you got a kind of a double blow this week. First off, it's going to be a lot of discs. It's going to be 4 discs on the Xbox because they didn't want to cut content. So 4 discs of Baldur's Gate 3 if you are an Xbox player, compared to 2 discs on PlayStation 5 and 1 disc on PC. That's pretty significant. But then because of that, because that is effectively 4 times as much physical production as it takes to get the PC version out, the Xbox version of the physical game is going to be slightly delayed. It didn't say specifically how long of a delay to expect, but I would probably estimate at least a week. If you want to get the physical copy of Baldur's Gate 3 on your Xbox, then you're gonna be waiting a little bit longer than your contemporaries on other platforms. Yeah, so just super interesting. That's all we've got for follow-ups and corrections. Let's talk real quick about trailers, because this is one of our other big headlines, and that is the Dune Awakening game that we've talked about previously. They just released some gameplay, a trailer. There's not as much gameplay in here as they want you to think there is, but we do have gameplay. We're teasing a world that, if you're not aware, it looks like it is exactly just the same Dune that we got in either the movie or the books, because they're similar enough that they could be the same to a degree. But the video game then kind of starts to show us some things that aren't in the books and definitely aren't in the movies. So it's like, what's going on here? Apparently, the creators of this game are doing a different universe version of Dune. So there's going to be some variations from the mythology that we all know and love, because video games, and it's a difficult one to translate onto gaming experience. I will give them that. But why license the IP if you're going to change some of these things so significantly? I don't understand that. Why not just call it something else and have it be similar to Dune. I mean, I don't know. So yeah, that's the thing. Go check out the trailer though. It does look like there might be something to it. It just feels like it's a little early to say it's going to be good. It'll just be interesting is all we can say at this stage in the game. That's all we have for trailers though. Let's talk now about some regular ass news. And this is a big one we probably should have touched on last week, but today's episode is sponsored by DUBBY. Real quick, I've been drinking this finally for the last week now, replacing my regular energy drink intake with a DUBBY drink, and it is doing the job actually rather swimmingly. So I'm totally behind this sponsorship. I really dig it. The flavor that I am drinking currently is the Push and Punch. It is a fruit punch lemon lime combination flavor. Tastes like if you were to take the Kool-Aid that you drank as a kid and then throw a little bit of vitamin C flavoring, the lemon lime kind of Spritey kind of flavor. That's exactly the flavor that you're expecting is this drink right here. So a couple of things to note about going with DUBBY instead of, say, getting your drinks from the grocery store or from the convenience store. I know a lot of people who drink energy drinks regularly just stop at 7-Eleven real quick and grab a Monster or whatever. This is gonna do you actually a little bit better in a number of ways. First up, it's only about $1.20 per serving. So this lovely shaker bottle that I got is actually 2 servings. So you're looking at about $2.40 roughly per shaker bottle, which will last me all day. That's around 300 milligrams of caffeine, which is plenty to get you through. I mean, to each their own, I suppose, but 300 milligrams is a good amount of caffeine. The caffeine is better than other energy drinks, the way they source their caffeine, because it is from an actual source. It is not synthesized caffeine. It is sourced from coffee fruit. And in other energy drinks that I've had that do source also from coffee fruit, there's usually a flavor of coffee kind of sitting underneath everything. Not the case with the DUBBY stuff. And if you are one of those who is opposed to the energy drinks, DUBBY's got you covered there too. They have a hydro line of drinks that have no caffeine. They're just for hydration, and they're still really tasty from what I've heard. I have yet to taste them myself, but as this sponsorship continues, we will be moving our way through their entire line of drinks. And yeah, so it's cheaper if you go per serving with the discount. That's that $1.20 is only if you use the discount Generally Nerdy at checkout. You can follow the link down in the description. It's cheaper than even if you go to the dollar store and get one of the drinks that they sometimes have at a dollar store. I know right now they have Prime, and very frequently they have Bang at the dollar store. We got more caffeine than Prime and still cheaper than the Bang. It's approximately the same amount of caffeine. Again, if you're doing the whole shaker bottle, you're getting the same amount of caffeine, but you also are getting the nootropics in here. There's a lot more to it than just the insane amounts of caffeine that come in a Bang. You're getting similar levels of caffeine, but also things that are going to help your brain function, your blood circulation, so on and so forth. So that is why I have gone with a DUBBY sponsorship. I really dig these guys. You should too. Once again, link in the description. Generally Nerdy is the code at checkout for you to get 10% off on your next energy drink purchase. So bottoms up, nerds. Yeah. Regular ass news, and this is a big one we probably should have touched on last week, but we didn't, because honestly I wanted to see what the response was, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna just stop talking so vaguely. So Nintendo has won kind of their lawsuit against the emulator company that created Yuzu. Yuzu is an emulator for the Nintendo Switch, and Nintendo brought a lawsuit against them, and then also somehow vicariously Citra, who is another emulator, is also being shut down as part of this same lawsuit. So very interesting. But so again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Nintendo brought a lawsuit against a DRM lawsuit, I believe is how it was specifically filed, against the creators of Yuzu, saying that they're costing them money because the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was downloaded over 1 million times and played on their platform. And there is an interesting back and forth because previously in the courts, emulation software has been upheld as, there is a legitimate way to do that. There is a way to play emulated games that is not playing pirated games. So that's why, generally speaking, they have been upheld in courts, because it's not 100% guaranteed that there's piracy. There is a viable reason to be playing it that is not piracy. So the court says, well, because that exists, then these are legal, technically speaking. It's just the how you obtain the ROM where the shady legality comes in. So, all of that being said, there have been some different situations with Yuzu. I don't know about the Citra comparison because that honestly didn't come out until I was already kind of past this story in the notes. So if there's more to follow up on next week, we'll definitely follow up on it. But it would seem that some of the developers have helped some of their customers, I guess, to play pirated games on their emulation software. So therein lies the catch, because if that's the situation, then that's not legal. So all of that is to say that last week there was a motion filed in this court proceeding to extend the amount of time that the producers of Yuzu had to respond. And so I was hoping we would get a response, and really all we got was, Yuzu is no more. So Yuzu and Citra are both being taken down off of their respective hosting sites because they just didn't want to fight it, it would seem. Theoretically, there is a way they could have won, but it would have been probably very expensive, and probably they don't have the resources to pay for something like that because emulation is whatever. But the reason I say that Nintendo only kind of won is because this was not after a judgment. The judge in this court did not say, Yuzu, you have to shut down and then you have to pay Nintendo X amount of dollars. No, what happened was they settled it out of court. So Yuzu is paying Nintendo $2.4 million, which presumably is way more than they actually made off of this situation. And they're taking down their software off of the internet. So you will not be able to get Yuzu directly from Yuzu, the people who created it. Again, I didn't write down the name of the company because I take amazing notes. So Nintendo wins, and it's a little bit scary because then they're also going after, oh no, Citra was Nintendo DS. That's what it was. It was a DS emulator. So, but immediately after they were taken down, new versions of them developed by other people, presumably just taking the existing version and changing a couple of lines of code or something and giving it a different name, those got slapped up on the internet pretty much the hour of. And so if you are looking to emulate your 3DS games or your Switch games, the option is still available, but it is just become a little bit more difficult. So yeah, that is our only piece of regular ass news for this episode. Let's get into our suggestions for video games. Video game suggestion this week is Metal Gear Solid, or the Metal Gear Master Collection, because it's not all Metal Gear Solid games. You have Metal Gear, Metal Gear 2, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Metal Gear Solid 3. So 5 games. That's just the base games. You also get, for Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3, there's a bunch of extra DLC content, or DLC. It's not DLC because it's a little too old for that, but additional content that was released after the game was released. You have the integral stuff, you have the VR missions, etc., etc., etc. All of that is part of the Master Collection, and all of that is so incredibly much fun to play. I am currently about halfway through playing Metal Gear Solid, probably for the 25th time, but it's the first time on my Switch, so there you go. It's on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series consoles, Steam, I think, as well, and the Switch. And I chose to get it on Switch because it is just an emulated version of the original game, so you don't need all this fancy hardware in order for it to work. It just freaking works because anything Switch and newer is going to be able to run something from the PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 pretty easily. I'm having an incredible amount of fun with Metal Gear Solid, the Master Collection. You should too. That is your suggestion for this week's gaming. That brings us to the end of the video, nerds. Thank you very much for joining me for the news. Once again, there is a full and probably much more up-to-date and recent episode of the news, the full-length version, if you will, called The Week in Nerddom over on the main channel, linked down in the description, and probably link popping up somewhere around my face right about now. So click on that, go check that out as well, or if you prefer your news in more truncated pieces, then by all means just stick around here and go check out some of the other stuff we offer on this channel. Thank you very much for joining me. We will see you in the next one. Before we go, always remember, nerds, that if it is generally nerdy, it's probably here.